This is a story about a film smuggled inside a cake, a man under house arrest, and a 20-year ban on filmmaking. Get comfortable, because this is something that you're going to want to hear. So, let's begin.
دارم وقت تلف میکنم به خود دارم احساس میکنم که حتی این کاری هم که میکنیم نمیدونم.
Jafar Panahi is one of Iran's most influential filmmakers, paving the way in the Iranian new wave film scene. But who is he? Well, Panahi has lived one hell of an interesting life. Born in Mianeh, Iran, his passion and love for filmmaking started from a very early age. From as young as 12 years old, Panahi worked after school so that he could afford to go to the cinema. After he finished school, Panahi was conscripted in the Iranian army and served as an army cinematographer. And during his service, he was actually captured by Kurdish rebels and held hostage for 76 days. This would only be the beginning of Panahi running into trouble pursuing his filmmaking. However, after a rocky start to his career, the first two feature films he made were fairly successful, putting him firmly on his way to becoming a household name in Iran. The White Balloon and The Mirror were films about young girls and their life in Iran. With both films going on to win numerous awards and receive widespread critical acclaim, these were wholesome stories and ones that were aimed at a wide audience. It was his next film that put him on his controversial track.
اینجا نگاه کن. همون رازقی که می‌خوایم بریم. ببین چقدر قشنگه. اینه بهش
In 2000, Panahi released the film The Circle. This was a major departure from his previous two films. The Circle depicts what life is like for women under the strict ruling of Iran, showing the harsh reality that women face. As with his previous films, The Circle takes a female-centered view to tell its story, but this is a far more mature and bleak look, using a more subtle approach to filmmaking, with long, handheld shots, and using real people as the actors in his film. The film shows that the rules and restrictions in place to show respect to women are in reality much more stifling, as if they were living in a prison. The fact that this film was banned in Iran is very telling. As Roger Ebert said in his review, few things reveal a nation than what it censors. After The Circle, Panahi went on to direct a few more successful feature films, gaining a large following at home and abroad. But, as we've seen before, Panahi was no stranger to clashes with authority. This was an incredibly tense time in Iran.
The announcement came the day after several people were killed in the capital following demonstrations.
The years between 2009 and 2010 saw the birth of the Iranian Green Movement, a time of high political tension that came about from the presidential elections. Mahmoud Ahmadinejad had been reigning president since 2005, but the people of Iran grew increasingly unhappy with his rule. The result of this election were to be a huge win for democracy in Iran. Against the backdrop of this unrest, the government held the election on the 12th of June 2009, with former Prime Minister Mir Hossein Mousavi as the most popular opposition. Ahmadinejad purportedly won a landslide victory, but claims that the elections were fraudulent quickly grew and mass protests began to break out in Iran, using the colour of Mousavi's campaign, green, as its symbol. One such protester was, of course, Panahi. After being arrested and detained for some time, Panahi was released on a $200,000 bail and then placed under house arrest. And during this house arrest is where we get
این چهار دیواری که میکشم خونه اتاق دختره باشه.
So, what sort of film do you have to make that is so controversial it has to be smuggled outside the country in a cake? I don't know about you, but this is definitely not what I was expecting. The film takes place almost entirely in Panahi's home, as he tries to explain his next film by acting it out in part in his room. All the while, in the background of the film, we see him on the phone to the lawyers trying to figure out his very uncertain future, with a soundtrack of bullets firing and explosions going off just outside his flat. This film is absolutely incredible for what it represents. It documents one man and his unbridled passion for his craft. no matter what obstacles might come his way. There's a sequence in this film where Panahi lists 3 or 4 films that he sent off to be approved by the embassy, and all of them were rejected. And yet he still perseveres.
که بتونم اگر بهم مجوز ندادن داخل خونه بتونم کار کنم که متاسفانه اونم نشده.
Panahi is truly an inspiration. Being able to witness him in this more honest and candid way is really a privilege. To be able to see how his mind works and what goes into his filmmaking process is incredible. I could easily watch hours and hours of this stuff. Even with the threat of a potential 6 years in prison, he still bends the restrictions placed on him to try and create something. He's not alone in making this film either. He asks for help from his friend Mojtaba Mertemasp. And this isn't as simple as asking your mate to come round and help film a video. These two could face some very serious repercussions if they're caught. Panahi tells Mojtaba, don't tell anyone what you're doing or where you're going. And at the end of the film, Mojtaba goes home because he is worried about the safety of his son. And yet they still got this movie out there. It just goes to show the power that cinema can have, and the lengths people are willing to go for their art. This Is Not a Film is certainly a unique experience. And as all good documentaries should, it captures an incredible story and makes it available for the world to see.
راستی بازیگری و خوندن فیلمنامه که جزو جرمای من حساب نمیشه.
امیدواریم.
Panahi is definitely in a league of his own here, and I am incredibly grateful for that cake getting out to Cannes. Well, so the story goes. There's not much about the details of the smuggling out there. Most reviews or articles I could find mention it in a throwaway line and then move on. But I did find one interesting slither of info. In an interview he gave with Wasafiri in 2012, he talks about how he has had to smuggle previous films out of the country in the past. We use all our wit and tricks in order to smuggle our films out of this country and to show them to the world. If we don't, they ban our films and stop them from being seen. This was in reference to one of his previous films, Offside. Because I was able to smuggle that film out of Iran and have it screened at the Berlin Film Festival. So having another one of his films smuggled inside a cake is definitely believable. Panahi is still directing despite being under heavy surveillance and restrictions. But, as he's shown us here, he will quite literally stop at nothing to do what he loves. And I think we can all take some inspiration from him.
شما کارگردانی نکن، شما نام فیلمنامه رو بخون.